Ken Cooper. We are continuing our discussions of interesting applications of system dynamics models, and I have a special interest in this talk about the NFL because every time I get together in a family gathering, my brother, who's an actuary, is harassing me about whether or not system dynamics can do anything to help you predict who's going to win the Super Bowl. So why don't you tell us about system dynamics in the NFL?
I'm glad to. Of all of the things that that I had the chance to be involved in, this would certainly have to rank as somewhere near the most fun of all of the work. There was a, and I'll tell the backstory to this if you like as well, but there's an NFL team owner who wanted to replicate the success of what were really just a few elite teams in the league. But his own team had floundered with a sort of fair to middling record over recent years, and like other teams, had exhibited a very clear pattern of oscillatory behavior. In some of the cases that we saw looking back over a decade or so for the different teams, you had some among the elite teams that over the course of time their season records oscillated up at a very high level, and some less fortunate and less competent teams, the oscillations were down in the lower areas. And the one that always stuck out to me as a perfect example was the New York Giants, who had a record that was about as close to a perfect sinusoidal behavior that just oscillated like this over the years.
Every Giants fan knows that.
So that connects to the story of how it started as well. So what we did was in the work was to design and build a model that we tailored to several different teams, several different NFL teams. And we had a great chance to draw from football legends of the time, including Bill Walsh, for his, in particular, for his performance arc theory, in which he described, as I guess is well known now, the notion of the growth and capability of a player in the first year or two or three, the typical plateauing that occurs, and then a fall off toward the end of their career. And these arcs are, in his view, probably true, of different durations and different levels for different positions. So we drew on those ideas, built causal structure, has really had quite extensive feedback mechanisms, as I think football fans can appreciate, between the offensive performance and the defense's performance, as well as the contribution of individual positions to those overall football measures. We used as you can imagine, there's a lot of football statistics available, and we used a lot of those to calibrate the model. We replicated accurately for several teams the sort of decade-long performance in terms of number of season wins, how far into the playoffs they got, number of points scored in each season, points allowed, field positions, clock control, and more. But all that along with the business performance of the franchise, attendance, revenue, salary costs, and the like. All of those important, particularly in these days of management under the salary cap. We went through a number of policy changes in terms of resource management and coaching priorities, and identified several measures and new policies that, when adopted, would reduce the oscillation of the team and contribute to a higher level of performance. One very specific occasion of this, the use of the model, was that the owner asked that we join them at their head table for college draft day, and on a lot of people would know that the time frame in drafting college players into the NFL, the time during which a team has to evaluate and make a choice after the previous team has gone, is only about 10 minutes. So we had already lined up in the model inputs to represent different players who were potential selections. And as the teams ahead of our client made their choices in the draft, we rapidly tested different possible choices for that they could select, to see how those choices would influence the longer-term performance of the team. It was quite an experience, and from the beginning to the end of that work, and certainly had a wider range of perks in terms of attendance at the games and such. So it was a great story to be a part of.
All right. You have to tell me a little bit more about how this team did, as much as you can. What can I tell my brother? Can we use the system dynamics model to predict the Super Bowl winner this year, or is it something about a strategy to build a winning team? What happened?
Well, there's both. The team went on to be very much more successful in playoff appearances and the Super Bowl. So the answer to your question, can we do that? To some partially, yes. Certainly, the idea was to build the team with a new set through a new set of policies, and that helped, and the draft helped. But we certainly learned that, as one example, that teams that consistently teams that do well during the regular season, although there are always exceptions, but there are levels of winning percentage during the regular season that are a pretty good predictor of how deeply into the playoffs teams will go. And so, I mentioned to you earlier that there's a pretty good chance that the winner of the Super Bowl will end up with a regular season record of 13 or 14 wins. Below that, it's more unusual for them to get that far.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Glad to.
I'm going to tell my brother all about this.